Yeah, I am.
Commissioner O'Donnell, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Ready? All right, good morning, everybody. Time is now 9:30 a.m. Today's date is Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. We are in the commission conference, Bollinger Conference Room at the offices of the Public Service Commission. This is time and place for our business meeting. I will call this meeting to order. My colleagues join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you, colleagues. I would note for the record that myself, Vice President Fielder, and Commissioner Bukacek are present in the Bollinger Room, and Commissioner O'Donnell is with us virtually. Commissioner Pinocci is excused this morning, so we do have quorum. All right. Montana Public Service Commission welcomes public comment on any matter that is on today's agenda or on any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the Montana Public Service Commission. Any public commenters in the room? Mr. Fitzmaurice, good to see you again. Please state and spell your name for the record and who you're representing.
Morning, commissioners. Thanks. My name is Nick Fitzmaurice. That's Fitzmaurice. I'm the Energy Transition Engineer at the Montana Environmental Information Center. I want to begin this morning by thanking the Commission for hosting hearings around the state last summer to engage the public on Northwestern Energy's 2023 Integrated Resource Plan. We understand that such meetings are highly taxing on the Commission's resources, but members of the public greatly appreciated the opportunity you provided for voicing their concerns on Northwestern's plan. I testify before you this morning to raise concerns on Northwestern's behavior as the utility begins a new IRP process. Ultimately, your jobs are made easier when the utility follows a transparent and rigorous planning process that meets statutory and administrative requirements, upholding its obligation to address the public's concerns for reliability and affordability. Unfortunately, when the utility fails up front in this work, submitting a plan that falls short of requirements and betrays public trust, this agency is forced to further strain limited resources to instruct the utility in rectifying these shortcomings. I fear we are headed for an even more tumultuous process in this current IRP process to the detriment of both the public and the Commission. Montana's Integrated Least Cost Resource Planning and Acquisition Act establishes an advisory committee for the IRP process. Montana Code 69-3-1208 states that a public utility shall maintain a broad-based advisory committee to review, evaluate, and make recommendations on technical, economic, and policy issues related to a utility's electricity system. The Electric Technical Advisory Committee, or ETAC, is an essential tool for guiding the IRP development process. With proper representation and stakeholder engagement, ETAC can ease the Commission's burden of fielding extensive public concerns and pointing out deficiencies to Northwestern at a point when the IRP is all but completed. That's why it's concerning that the current ETAC membership, as invited to attend the recent ETAC meeting held on June 27th, does not satisfy the basic statutory requirements for this committee to be broad-based. Instead, the committee is composed of numerous government employees and one national environmental nonprofit. The final member represents the Bureau of Business and Economic Research, whose steady funding stream from Northwestern Energy constitutes a financial conflict of interest that dashes public confidence in its ability to push for more rigorous modeling and scenario planning to protect affordable electric rates. In the past, Northwestern has convened a larger pool of unbiased independent representatives from varying interested parties, but groups that have served on this committee for years, some even decades, are notably excluded from the committee. Absent are large and small energy developers, low and fixed income customer advocates, independent economists, Montana-based NGOs, and qualified members of the public. Residential customers, Northwestern's only customer class, showing substantial growth and arguably Northwestern's largest stakeholder, neglect representation. Northwestern is blatantly out of compliance with its statutory obligation to convene a broad-based advisory committee. Additionally, by holding ETAC meetings closed to the public, Northwestern is an extreme outlier among other utilities in the region, violates commission rules, and may even be acting in violation of Montana's public meeting laws. It is standard practice for public utilities to keep IRP advisory committees open to the public. Avista's Technical Advisory Committee, Idaho Power's Integrated Resource Plan Advisory Council, Puget Sound Energy's Resource Planning Advisory Group, and Portland General Electric's IRP technical and non-technical monthly meetings are all open to the public. Montana Administrative Rule 38.5.2023 further states that utilities shall open meetings with the advisory committee to the public whenever possible, and that a utility shall engage with the committee before deciding to close a meeting to the public. The public has been given no notice of ETIC activities, and there is no opportunity for a committee to be engaged before closing meetings to the public. At the recent Energy and Telecommunications Interim Committee meeting, Northwestern was directly asked about the current status of ETAC. The response was ambiguous and referred to previous ETAC operations while neglecting to mention that Northwestern recently formed ETAC for the upcoming integrated resource planning cycle without notifying the public or the legislature. Northwestern has posted no information on the status of ETAC to its website, while its page for the committee appears to be taken down. Northwestern would like to eliminate ETAC from statute altogether, further jeopardizing transparency and public trust in the IRP process. However, any future revisions to the Integrated Least Cost Resource Planning and Acquisition Act that the legislature may adopt do not exempt Northwestern from complying with the laws in effect today. At a meeting of the Select Committee on Energy Resource Planning and Acquisition, Northwestern itself admitted that nobody was satisfied with their previous IRP process. Unfortunately, Northwestern is further damaging public trust by beginning an IRP process for which the public will have access to even less information. In quietly holding ETAC meetings without broad-based membership and public participation, Northwestern Energy violates Montana statute, is a regional and national outlier, and further damages public trust in its integrated resource planning process. The utility must be held accountable to those who pay its bills and will be on the hook if Northwestern doesn't adequately plan for an affordable future. We urge the PSC to tell Northwestern that ETAC is not in compliance with the letter nor the intent of Montana law and commission rules. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Good to see you. Any other public comment this morning in the room? Any other public comment in the room? Seeing none. Any other commenters online? I'm being told there are not. All right. Let's move on. We do not have any changes to the agenda this morning, so we'll move right into our action items. Action item number 1 is approval of the commission minutes for the week of July 8, 2024. Is there a motion, Vice President Fielder?
Mr. President, I move approval of commission minutes for the week of July 8th, 2024.
Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion and second. Discussion, revisions, edits? Seeing none, all those in favor of Vice President Fielder's motion to adopt the draft commission minutes for the week of July 8, 2024 as the final minutes for that meeting signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries 4-0. Minutes are adopted. Work session item number 1 is docket 2024.05.060. This is Circle H Water. We're here to consider a petition for rulemaking to amend Administrative Rule of Montana 38.5.2501 and 38.5.2602 to allow privately owned small water utilities to adopt the water rates of local public water utilities. Ms. Vowski. All right, Ms. Vowski.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. President, Commissioners. On May 24th, 2024, Circle H Water Inc. filed with the Commission a petition for rulemaking, asking the Commission to amend 2 of its administrative rules. The first rule Circle H asked the Commission to amend is Administrative Rule of Montana 38.5.2501. Circle H asked the Commission to amend that rule to allow small, privately owned water utilities to elect to adopt the rates of the closest public water utility. Circle H also asked the Commission to amend Administrative Rule of Montana 38.5.2602. Circle H asked the Commission to amend that rule to allow the utilities that adopt the rates of the closest public water utility to forego filing annual reports with the Commission. On July 8th, 2024, the Montana Consumer Council submitted comments to the Commission regarding the petition. The comments encouraged the Commission to deny the petition. Staff recommends the petition be denied. In your reading materials, you will find a proposed order that sets forth staff's reasons for recommending the petition be denied. Among those reasons are the fact that adopting the rates of the closest public water utility will not ensure just and reasonable rates, which are required pursuant to Montana Code Annotated Section 69-3-201. Another reason is that Montana Code Annotated Section 69-3-203 requires that all public utilities file annual reports with the Commission. Staff's recommendation here today, then, is that the Commission accept the proposed order in the reading materials as the Commission's final order and authorize staff to make further clerical edits as necessary to the proposed order to improve clarity without, of course, changing the disposition. And with that, Mr. Fink and I would be happy to answer any questions the Commission might have about the petition or staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Vowski. Mr. Fink, anything to add?
No, Mr. President, nothing.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion? Commissioner Bukacek?
I make a motion to accept staff recommendations to deny Circle H's petition and issue the proposed order with any necessary clerical edits.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, Mr. President.
All right, we have motion and second discussion. Vice President Fielder?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. A question for staff, I suppose. In reviewing this request, this petition, did staff review the fundamental concept that was enacted in statute, that is, these municipal utilities have representation of the citizens that vote in those districts for their elected officials, correct? Is that correct, first of all? It's my understanding, let me rephrase that if I may. It's my understanding that when a utility is governed by a board that is elected by the people, the ratepayers, then those ratepayers have direct representation on that board, or at least they have elected representation governing that utility. And the privately owned companies, the citizens don't get to elect, the ratepayers don't get to elect the representatives of the board that govern that company. And that's why the legislature has assigned those types of cases to us as elected officials to administer with some representation of the people. Was this discussed or examined as part of the analysis on this?
President Brown, Vice President Fielder, I did not review that. What I did review is see how municipalities set their rates, which they're required, as MCC I think alluded to in their comments, to set just and reasonable rates. But of course, how they do that, I don't know. I didn't look into that. What I was mostly concerned with was what our responsibilities were as the Public Service Commission.
Thank you. Well, the first thing that came to mind for me with this one is, we have a role to provide elected representation for the privately owned utilities where the citizens don't have an opportunity to elect the people that direct those companies. And so unless the nearest utility that was run by a municipal entity encompassed all of those ratepayers of the private entity, I think there'd be a big conflict of what the legislative intent was behind that representation. So that was the first issue I looked at, but I do agree that I think the nuts and bolts of the statute and the administrative rule support staff's recommendation to us, but I think the broader issue is the representation factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Fielder. Additional discussion? Commissioner Bukacek?
It's not a question, but I just wanted to state that I empathize with the small water utility owners, and I have had a couple of constituents contact me over the last year and a half. Some of these are mom and pop type of organizations. Some of these people are somewhat elderly, and they struggle with getting the paperwork done. But the annual report requirement from Montana Code Annotated 69.3203 and the administrative rule, it's very, very clear that it's required. And I just wanted to mention to the public, we have at the PSC an open door with staff who can help assist with that paperwork. And it's very clear on our website, the assistance program that we have for people to help. So just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Commissioner Bukacek. Commissioner O'Donnell?
Mr. President?
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. I noticed that in the request by the utility that they said that the rate, either setting rates through a rate case, a formal rate case procedure, or the operating ratio methodology is burdensome and time consuming. And I would like to say that we spent a lot of time developing that ORM to assist a utility in coming up with giving all the information for us to come up with just and reasonable rates, and that it is not meant to be burdensome. It is meant specifically to help a utility avoid the costliness of a rate case. And if any utility finds that this ORM requirement is burdensome and unduly time consuming and a constraint, please get in touch with us. It is meant to facilitate operations and is not meant to impede. And if anybody feels that way, please, they need to be encouraged to contact us so that we could address those concerns, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Just additional discussion? All right, I will be supporting the motion denying Circle H's petition. I would note that Circle H essentially asked for two actions on the part of the commission, which is one, to allow small water utilities such as themselves to simply adopt rates of the closest public water utility, and furthermore to allow utilities that do so to forego filing annual reports with the commission. I would note that this is one of the easier matters that I've ever voted on in 3 years and 7 months on the commission, and that Montana law doesn't allow us to do either action as requested. So by granting this petition, we would be acting unlawfully. So the law defines our jurisdiction and our actions, and in this case, the legislature has said we cannot grant this relief. Additional discussion? Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to deny Circle H's petition signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries 4-0. All right, thank you, Mr. Fink, Ms. Fahowski. All right, let's move on to Work session item number 2. This is docket 2022.07.077. This is Northwestern Corporation doing business as Northwestern Energy. We're here to consider finalizing Northwestern Energy's requested natural gas rate adjustments and to consider whether Northwestern's fixed price gas supply purchases were prudently incurred. Mr.
Good-
Webster?
Good morning, Mr. President,
Good
members of
morning,
the
Mr.
commission.
Templeton.
This approval of this application, because the commission set interim rates for 24-25 last month, this will have no effect on the rates. Now, if the commission were to approve a disallowance, as MCC is requesting, that would mean a rebate to customers of about 11.1 million. So staff recommends that because we have natural gas procurement guidelines in Northwestern's tariff, and staff believe that Northwestern generally followed those guidelines, that you deny the disallowance and approve the application. And perhaps staff is requesting the commission to order that parties revisit the natural gas procurement guidelines in the rate case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Templeton. Ms. Webster?
Good morning, President Brown and commissioners. To follow on to Mr. Templeton's summary, procedurally in this docket, last year in June 2023, the commission issued an interim order which approved Northwestern's application on an interim basis, effective for all services July 1, 2023 and after. After that, the commission held a contested hearing in this matter, which was held on February 20th, 2024. Staff recommends that the commission approve the interim rate adjustments as final. The sole issue in this docket is Northwestern's contested hedging transactions. Staff's recommendation is that this docket should be limited to the sole contested hedging issue because this docket is only concerned with Northwestern's tracking adjustment procedures for the 2022 to 2023 period. Northwestern presented substantial convincing testimony that the hedging transactions that contributed to those purchases in 2022 to 2023 were prudently incurred. Northwestern substantially followed all of the commission's hedging guidelines, which were promulgated in 2007. They provided substantial documentation of their planning procedures and the policies that they consider. In contrast, MCC did not provide convincing testimony that the considerations Northwestern had when it made the hedging purchases were prudently incurred, that the circumstances were not such that a reasonable utility manager would have made the same hedging purchases as Northwestern. For those reasons, staff recommends that the commission approve the draft final order, allowing for staff to make any necessary clerical edits for improving clarity and understanding. Specifically, one note I would like to point out is that the table on page 3, the third row, should be property taxes. Unless anyone else has anything to add, we are happy to stand for any questions at this time.
Before we entertain a motion, just to clarify your last statement there. So page 3 of the draft final order, the third column of the table where it reads production asset tax rate, that should be property tax. Is that what you're saying?
President Brown, that is correct.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion?
Those rates are set in the rate case. But that production asset costs. The production asset costs are set in a rate case, those rates. It just.
All right, thank you, Mr. Templeton. Is there a motion? Commissioner Bukacek.
Yes, sir. I make a motion to approve Northwestern's requested natural gas rate adjustments on a final basis, to deny the Montana Consumer Council's request to disallow full recovery of Northwestern's fixed price purchases that exceeded index prices, and authorize staff to issue the final draft order with all the necessary clerical edits.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second the motion, Mr. President.
All right, we have motion and second discussion. Vice President Fielder.
A question for Mr. Templeton. Mr. Templeton, at the beginning of your remarks, I think you reiterated that this is not a new rate increase. This is approval of the interim rate increase that was previously allowed for. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Templeton, also in your remarks, you mentioned, I believe it was you that mentioned the commission order that this program be reviewed or reevaluated. Can you elaborate on that, please?
In 2007, the commission approved, Mr. President, Commissioner Fielder, the commission approved natural gas procurement guidelines to be put into tariff for Northwestern. Now, that was 2007 in a 2005 docket when that was done, and it's been quite a while since then. So because this issue has been coming up over the years, the Northwestern's hedging practices, staff believe it's time to revisit them, the guidelines that were approved by the commission.
Mr. President, follow up.
Follow up.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. It seems like there's definitely some work that needs to be done on this and some review and analysis that should happen, particularly since those guidelines are so old and were established in a different time and place than we're in now in this energy environment. My question is that the draft order, the way it's been prepared, says the commission determines it would be appropriate to revisit the guidelines. Who do you anticipate revisiting the guidelines? Would that be commission doing that, or is this order meant to suggest that the utility do that or the MCC do that? What does it look like in your
President Brown, Commissioner Fielder, the parties should revisit it, and then the commission can make a determination following that.
All right, thank you.
Additional discussion? Commissioner.
Mr. President.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. In looking at this, the assertion by Montana Consumer Council that the utility, their hedging and the certain losses that they point out rendered their actions imprudent and that be disallowed. Certainly, every member of the commission and staff takes very seriously our role to make sure that the actions of the utility are prudent and are not unduly costing ratepayers money. I would say that I agree quite a bit with the staff report earlier that Northwestern seems in this case to have followed the letter and the intent of the guidelines that was set down by this commission in 2007, I believe, that one of the main goals is to reduce volatility. And the hedging was mentioned as one of the tools to do that. But having just come out of a period of great instability in natural gas prices, the utility seems to me to have used all the tools to really forecast, to guess actually, what would be happening to rates in the instances that Montana Consumer Council points out that they had a loss on there, that had they not had these hedging in terms of these purchases, long-term purchases, that the rate actually went down. They were very selective on that. It seems to me from the evidence that I've seen that Northwestern in other cases had a profit on that. So in achieving the goal of avoiding the rates jumping around wildly, to have some price stability, that they were very careful on that. Of course, estimating what's going to happen in the future is not an exact science at all. Many factors go into it. And if certainty was able to be achieved by estimating what's going to happen in the future, Las Vegas would not exist. It seems to me that Northwestern used a lot of care and concern in their hedging decisions. And it seems to me that this becomes similar to a premium on an insurance policy, that if you pay insurance premiums for a year and nothing happens to make you claim on that, you could count that as a loss or as a cost of doing business. It seemed to me that the certainty, the comfort given, the shielding from unforeseen dramatic events by having an insurance premium is a very reasonable cost of doing business and should not be regarded as a loss. So I support the motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Commissioner Bukacek.
I have no questions for staff. I just have two very brief comments. The staff did a great job, laid it out clearly and concisely that MCC did not provide sufficient testimony or evidence to rebut Northwestern showing of substantial compliance with the commission's guideline based on testimony and record evidence. So, and I appreciate the clarification by Mr. Templeton in response to Vice President Fielder's question of how we will be looking at the process of the hedging losses, because we all share concern about those losses. So thank you so much. I will be supporting my own motion.
Additional discussion? All right, I'll speak to the motion. So let's parse this matter in order down into two different questions. One of the staff recommendation is to approve Northwestern's requested natural gas rate adjustments on a final basis, as Mr. Templeton stated. We already, as a commission, approved adjustments on a interim basis. We held a hearing in this matter, I believe, in February 2024. Seems like a long time ago at this point, and I must confess I had to sort of search through my memory to even remember this hearing at this point. But setting that aside, I believe, and Ms. Webster, you can certainly correct me on this, that as I recall, MCC did not contest during that hearing Northwestern's requested natural gas rate adjustments, correct?
President Brown and commissioners, my understanding is that the MCC contests the portion of the natural gas rate adjustments attributable to hedging.
Right, I'm going to get there. Okay. So the second question that's involved in this case is the fixed price purchases, correct? What that exceeded index prices, what we're otherwise calling hedging, correct?
President Brown, that's correct.
Okay. So what MCC contested, as I recall, during the February hearing was that sole portion of Northwestern's application, if you will.
President Brown, that's correct. At the hearing, MCC clarified that they're not asking the commission to go back and look at previous hedging transactions that were already approved.
And at hearing, the only issue and dispute was Northwestern's request for cost recovery for the 2022-2023 period, correct?
President Brown, that is correct.
And the thrust of today's order, if we should adopt it, is that we are going to reject MCC's position because we found our finding based on the evidence presented in this matter that Northwest Energy relied in part on guidelines adopted by this commission, correct?
President Brown, that is correct. To put an asterisk on a statement I made previously, at the bottom of page 5, footnote 2, there's a space from the hearing that's referenced. At the hearing, MCC acknowledged that it's not requesting that the commission order Northwestern to refrain from engaging in hedging moving forward. And staff does find that this docket is limited to the 2022 to 2023 supply costs that Northwestern incurred.
Okay, well, that you just raised the final point I was making. I believe it was my question at the end of that hearing asking MCC to clarify whether the February hearing involved a challenge by them as to the validity of our hedging guidelines, correct? And their answer is that they aren't challenging either the guidelines as written and or the ability of Northwestern Energy to engage in quote hedging practices moving forward. Am I correct in my remembrance of that?
President Brown, one moment, if I may confer with my colleagues.
Mr. Fink.
President Brown, commissioners, as I recall, that is correct. They were not challenging either of the two items you just mentioned.
Okay, so pretty simple matter for us this morning. Really what we're considering is whether or not we believe that MCC did not present sufficient evidence, as Commissioner Bukacek stated, for us to disallow Northwest Energy's practice and application of entering into fixed price contracts for the 2022-2023 period. This isn't a review of a 20-year analysis of Northwestern Energy's hedging practices, despite what has been otherwise asserted in this case. I will say this, I am somewhat reluctant to support the motion in this case, but I am going to do so. The place I'm going to start is that 3 years and 7 months on this commission, as my colleagues know, I have shown a healthy skepticism of the practice of hedging. I absolutely agree with that portion of the staff recommendation that the commission needs to, and I won't be on the commission as of January 6, 2025, but future commissions need to take a look at the guidelines that were adopted in 2007 to see if they're still applicable and are a proper guideline for us to determine whether or not actions of a regulated utility that engages in the hedging practices meets our prudency standards. I just think it's time to revisit that. The second thing is that the reason I'm going to support today's motion is twofold. One is, as I pointed out, is that other than the hedging piece, MCC didn't challenge the rest of what Northwest Energy requested in terms of its application. So that's unchallenged. But the second thing is that parties have the right to rely on guidelines that are issued by this commission. And if they act within the confines of that, then the expectation is that we will deem their actions prudent because we've listed out the guidelines. So it's with very much reluctance that I'm going to support this motion today. Additional discussion. Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to ask for some clarification regarding paragraph 57 in the order and the final sentence of that, which is the one that says the commission determines it would be appropriate to revisit the guidelines, et cetera, as well as Northwestern's corresponding natural gas tariff and Northwestern's pending case. The way I read that, and I would like to know if my colleagues read it the same way, is that it would be appropriate for the commission to review its guidelines and for the parties to review the natural gas tariffs in Northwestern's pending rate case. I guess the commission could review it as there as well, but I think it's a commission guideline and it's the commission that needs to review it. Would you agree with that? Do my colleagues agree with that? That is it incumbent upon us as an agency to do that?
If you're asking me that question, then I would agree with you. I think that's what this paragraph says.
Okay, I think Mr. Templeton's answer was that the parties should do it, but I think it's, I think there's concurrence and without hearing objection from my colleagues that it's the commission that should be reviewing that at the onset.
Mr. Templeton, did you want to?
President Brown, Commissioner Fielder, what I meant was the parties would submit testimony on the guidelines and the prudency of the guidelines, and the commission would make a decision. So yes, the commission would review the evidence submitted by the parties.
If I may follow on to Mr. Templeton's statement, Vice President Fielder and Commissioners, paragraph 57 was written to provide flexibility for the commission moving forward and how the guidelines are revisited. Staff have discussed revisiting the guidelines in the Northwestern's pending rate case, but the specific language of paragraph 57 does not mandate any specific way that will be addressed. But staff is looking at it, and I think the parties are on notice now that this will be something the commission will be looking at moving forward.
Thank you. I would concur with that reading and interpretation. So thank you.
Additional discussion? Additional discussion. All those in favor of Commissioner Bukacek's motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. All right, that concludes our work session items for the day. Several matters for, well, one matter anyway for public consumption. We are scheduled to our next commission business meeting next Tuesday, July 30th, 2024, 9:30 a.m., the regular time. So we will be meeting next Tuesday. Seeing no further business to come before the commission, I'll adjourn today's meeting. The time is now 10:11 a.m.